truth.
You betcha. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. AFR Talk, proudly on 800-800-2555. Military Bible Sticks, $25. Puts the Word of God, the Word of Christ, the Gospel, into a soldier's hands. We'll talk more about that and more in depth a little later on in the broadcast. Right now, have you been watching the George Zimmerman closing argument? And even before that, you've been watching the trial. Some of you have expressed that on Facebook, and just jumping right in. This is highlighting when you do not have substance, you've got to attack and make baseless claims. Should be a lesson to all of us on how we evaluate an issue. The issue here is justice. Justice for a man who defended himself, arguably, I believe, absolutely, versus justice for a man who was unjustly killed. Charge of second-degree murder, and now manslaughter is part of that, but not third-degree murder. Another story altogether. Here's the point. I didn't mention race anywhere in there because it should never be about race. Oh, thank you, Mr. Idealistic Crane Durham. Race is a diversion. Captain Obvious is here. Race is a diversion. You know that. You have red blood? You know that. Okay? Not about pigmentation. If you have red blood, you know that. And what I want to do is explain rather detailed analysis of just how bad the mainstream media is at presenting information. And I'm not going to go to the Zimmerman case right now. I wanted to open with that. I want to hit immigration. Then at the bottom of the hour, we're going to be speaking with Pastor Aaron Free. Aaron Free is obviously a regular guest on this program, Afternoons with Aaron, talking about marriage, infidelity, forgiveness. We'll also be hitting the issue in Egypt and Christians being slaughtered, and a prayer for those to come to Christ, which you can get in on the Facebook page. But first we go to, well, when you don't have substance, what do you have to do? Remember this comment from President Obama in the selling of Obamacare? Roll it.
I think most of us would agree that if we want to cover all Americans, we can't make the mistake of trying to fix what isn't broken. So if somebody has insurance they like, they should be able to keep that insurance. If they have a doctor that they like, they should be able to keep their doctor. They should just pay less for the care that they receive.
We know now that's not true. Millions are set to lose. So that's not true. Something patently not true. When we talk about Obamacare, what is the conversation? How to fix it? Do we judge it on the substance? Do we say that here's the paradigm we want to use? We want to set up a model that empowers competition, that gets the government out, because government is terribly inefficient, plus they shouldn't even be there in the first place. No, what it comes down to is you don't like people to have health care if you don't want the government to do it. Yes. Arguably asinine in the characterization of that, but that's the cartoonish image that we have to deal with. Then we have the environment and tragedy and cap and trade. Tom Hartman, liberal commentator, said this earlier last month. Roll it.
When those brave firefighters are laid to rest later this week, their funeral costs are most likely going to be paid for by their family members. And that should not be the case. Because it was the fossil fuel industry in this country that killed these men. And the fossil fuel industry should be responsible for paying for their funerals. These deaths are just the latest example of the overwhelming negative externalities associated with America's addiction to toxic and dirty fossil fuels. A negative or externality, this is fancy economic speak. It's a cost borne by all of us that was produced by a private entity and then dumped on us.
Okay. They don't have a case about global warming, 15 years of the Earth's temperature flat. They can't draw the causation and even the correlation now between high CO2 and temperatures rising. So what do they have to do? They have to use tragedy to blame, get you focused on the tragedy because we all feel bad, and say, oh, somebody's got to be to blame for that. And it's got to be, big oil, whatever it may be. Never addressing the substance of the issue, never addressing their claims of what they said was happening and it has not happened, and trying to scare more people into believing what they believe. And then we have Chris Hayes of MSNBC. MSNBC, it's a network that's still on. Yes, many of you don't know that according to the ratings. At least that's what it seems. Now, Chris Hayes is talking about characterizations of political parties, specifically the Republican Party, and this had to do with Obamacare. Roll it.
If you were to sketch the worst caricature of a Republican, you describe him as maniacally obsessed with destroying Barack Obama and cruelly indifferent to the lives of the non-rich. Cartoonish villain who wants to dash people's hopes of finally getting affordable health insurance purely out of spite. And yet here we are, with Republicans in 21 states and 6 still up in the air, looking to deny low-income residents federally funded health coverage. It's not just at the state level. In the Senate, Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn are sending letters to professional sports leagues like the NFL and NASCAR, telling them not to cooperate with any promotion about upcoming health care implementation, warning the leagues against taking sides on Obamacare. We are seeing an entire national party dedicated to a form of sabotage, the intent of which is to make sure that the ordinary working people have a hard time getting health insurance. That's it. I mean, think about how perverse that is. We're the Republican Party, and we're here to break things. But they're not just playing politics. They are playing with people's lives.
Policies do impact our lives, and certainly Obamacare and all its failures is doing just that, which we were warned about, those critics like me of Obamacare, as we know the Affordable Care Act to be. We see that in the suspension of the employer mandate. We see that in the fact that they are relieving workers to go under the number of 50 in order to not have to pay a fine, moving those workers to part-time, largest increase to part-time workers, 13.8% to 14.6% on the U6 last jobs report. Here's what you need to know. This is not an isolated incident. This is not just some random statement that is an anomaly. This is how the left characterizes, through caricatures, their opposition. They don't stick to the numbers. They don't stick to the facts. Go back, George Zimmerman. Don't stick to the facts. Stick to speculation. Gin up fear. Don't publish certain photos. Do publish others. Get a narrative out there so that the truth has a harder time to come out, and set that narrative in, bake it in. And that is what has happened to conservatives. It has happened to cultural conservatives, and specifically it's happened to many of us, Christian conservatives. But the good news is we have the truth on our side. On the flip side, we are going to break down one of the most biased interviews that I've ever witnessed. But the good news is the person that the deck was stacked against just simply engaged all 4 panelists and laid the smackdown on them. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, proudly on AFR Talk.